All right, hello and good afternoon, everyone, to Tech in Asia and Johnson & Johnson Impact Ventures Virtual Pitch Battle 2022. My name's Nat, I'm the managing editor at Tech in Asia Studios and your host for today's pitch battle. Leading up to today, we've been collaborating with our friends at Johnson & Johnson Impact Ventures and have received over 100 applications across the Asia-Pacific region. From that pool, we've picked 6 very promising startups to pitch in front of our judges and all of you watching at home. Our startups are pitching for the chance to win some very attractive prizes, with today's winner walking away with 2 11-inch 1TB iPad Pros, while the runner-up will receive a year's premium subscription for 10 people on a mental well-being app with 24/7 access to coaches for on-demand support. And all these total prizes are worth up to $5,000 US. Now, we're going to be going with our standard pitch battle rules this afternoon. Each startup will have 5 minutes to present, at which point we will ring a bell when their time is up. So make sure you listen for that bell sound. And then the judges will have 5 minutes to grill the presenters in a question and answer session. Speaking of our esteemed judges, please join me in welcoming to the Zoom stage our judges. First up, we have climate tech investor Jen Long. We also have David Higgins, Impact Investment Lead at Johnson & Johnson, and Eunice Wong, a principal at Monks Hill Ventures. Judges, good to have you with us today. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Great to be here.
No, it's great to have you guys here. So maybe before we get into our pitch battle, could we hear from you guys about what you're hoping to see from today's pitch battle? Maybe David, could you start us off with what you're looking forward to seeing from our contestants?
Sure, yeah, happy to put in a comment. I mean, I've been working with Johnson & Johnson Impact Ventures now for about 4 years, and I am always find myself incredibly privileged to engage with sort of startups and to sort of see the amazing work and the enthusiasm that sort of the startups do, particularly in the area that we focus on, which is kind of really around enabling solutions to kind of health problems kind of globally. So what I'm really looking forward to over the next little while is to really sort of be able to sort of see some fantastic innovative ideas and to really be able to see where we can actually find solutions maybe for creating both impact with really amazing business models.
All right. Eunice, how about you? Are you looking forward to listening to some of the pitches later? Tell us what you're hoping to see.
Definitely. Maybe just a quick intro on Monks Hill Ventures for those of you who are not as familiar with us. So we're a Southeast Asian fund, Series A focused, vertical agnostic. And so we do actually have quite a few healthcare companies in our portfolio. So today I'm really hoping to hear some truly innovative and hopefully inspirational, stories and business models, right? That, we can hopefully, take a closer look at after this pitch battle, in fact, as well. We've seen quite a few interesting plays out of Southeast Asia, and I'm looking forward to meeting them.
All right. How about Jen? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I think with impact-led or impact-focused ventures, it's always great to meet entrepreneurs who choose to make that choice to grow both commercial and impact milestones, and hopefully that can help to nudge the entrepreneurs as well as entrepreneurs, aspirees in the audience, to think about how else they could also try and demonstrate impact whilst pursuing commercial goals. And thanks for the Tech in Asia team for having me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, judges. And now, if we're all ready to get started for this afternoon, how about we let the battle begin? So maybe let's start off by welcoming our first startup of the day. Based in Singapore, we have Gaurav from ActivoLabs. ActivoLabs builds digital behavioral modification tools using best practices and scientific methods to improve the health of people across cultures and countries. Very interesting stuff. Gaurav, are you ready?
Yes, I am, and very excited to be here. I'll start sharing my screen, and let me know once you can see my screen.
Yep, we can all see your screen. So if you are good to go, your 5 minutes starts now.
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. I'm Gaurav. I'm the CEO and co-founder of ActivoLabs, and we're a digital health sciences platform headquartered in Singapore, and right now with colleagues across 4 markets in around Asia Pacific itself. Our reason to tell is actually the macro problem statement of longevity. As a species, we are living longer than ever before, but those extra years that we live longer, we are living longer with a disease, and that has a tremendous impact on that entire ecosystem. And that's why we believe that longevity itself presents a lot of wicked problems to solve, but the solutions to this problem also represents the single largest business opportunity of the 21st century. So to that effect, over the last 4.5 years, what we have done is that we have built a real-time digital health platform. It takes in data from any IoT-enabled devices. It harmonizes those data, and then post-analysis of the data, it comes up with digital journeys that helps populations understand their risk of various chronic conditions and how they can go about preventing them. And as a business, we are B2B2C, so we do not have a direct-to-consumer channel, but we work primarily with the enterprise industry. So life and health insurance companies, companies in the employee benefit space, reinsurance companies, banks, telcos, consumer internet companies, anyone willing to have a conversation with their consumer population around health and longevity, we can be a partner of their choice. Now I'm going to talk about the platform. The platform is built on this core pillar called the Activo Score. We figured out the best way to talk to a population about their risk, which is multifactorial in nature, is to do through a composite scoring mechanism, which is the Activo Score. It's been built by my co-founder, Professor Lai, and his team on a very deeply profiled population health study. It can take in data from any smartphone or fitness trackers and then classify it based on a scale of 1 to 99. And the score itself is a predictor of the antithesis of health and longevity, which is the probability of you getting a chronic condition or all-cause mortality in the next 10 years is built on a research spanning 2 decades itself. Now, around the score, what we have done is that we have created an entire platform, multiple journeys, and what we call modules. The Activo module focuses on corporate health and retail health. How do you keep a healthy population healthy? Then we build further journeys that goes into the self-care of pre-diabetes and diabetes. We launched Activo Mind, which is basically our first foray into the mental well-being space, where we onboarded clinical psychologists and we digitized various aspects of cognitive behavioral therapy. The ones with the star marks is what we have in our roadmap. Activo Heart would be additional journeys on hypertension, dyslipidemia, very common comorbidities with diabetes. We're coming up with a smoking cessation program. It's exactly what CBT practitioners do to help people quit smoking. And Good Biome is something that project in partnership with A-Star here in Singapore. We're coming into the whole gut microbiome analysis and precision nutrition journey. All this data flows into our risk analytics engine, where we expose APIs to our partners on the relative risk of various morbidities itself. And the platform can be consumed as is, white label, integrated into native applications, either through SDKs or PWAs itself. Our first place of landing was obviously in the corporate health and well-being space. We built a completely digital plug and play corporate programs. We do not go corporate by corporate, but we partner through our distributors and channel partners. So Mercer Marsh, which is one of the largest corporate well-being players in the world, is one of our partners, and we go to their marquee clients. And we have been fairly successful over the last couple of years, rolling out in various markets across Southeast Asia. But we're also seeing a lot of partnerships emerging in the consumer internet space. So this is MWell. It is a health super app in the Philippines promoted by the Metro Pacific Group. So they have your usual telehealth, e-pharmacy, e-diagnostics, but the only thing dynamic are the journeys supported by Activo. And they have white labeled the Activo score, called it the M-Wellness score. Anybody in Philippines can download this and get a score, and related to that score, they get certain journeys itself. But our biggest business segment is actually in the insurance space, where we are helping them to do 2 main things. Number 1, improve proximity and engagement with their policyholders. And number 2 is that help them not only evaluate that risk on their books, but help them to manage it better, which actually helps them to come up with innovative financial journeys for their customers. We have a regional partnership with AXA. First up to go is in Hong Kong, where we're launching to support an insurance product that gives you discounts on the way you go about your lifestyle. Similarly, they've done this in India as well. This is the fastest growing health insurance company in India with more than 150,000 users using the lifestyle score, and your annual score can get you up to 30% discounts on your annual premiums itself. So that's the space in which we operate in. We are very excited about our roadmap. The ones that are already live, like you mentioned, in Q3, we're coming up with the weight loss program. This is a digital weight loss program that the Activo Score is going to use to calculate your calories out. And then Activo Heart and Activo Mind 2.0 is something that's in the works. We work very closely with our partners to understand what exactly would work, and everything, the platforms available in multiple languages already across English, traditional Chinese, Japanese, Bahasa, Thai, very soon.
All right, Gaurav, I'm so sorry, but your 5 minutes is up. Thank you so much.
Well, that's pretty much it. I was on my last slide, so thank you so much.
Oh, wonderful. Great timing. Okay, so let's hear from the judges now. Judges, do you have any questions for Gaurav?
Thanks, Gaurav. David here from Johnson & Johnson. Gaurav, is it too early to ask if you've had what kind of commercial traction you've had with the business?
Yeah, so we are at a $1.8 million ARR last month. Last year we did around 700 US. So we're looking at somewhere in the region of ending the year at 3.5 to 4 million. So yeah, we've been around for 4 years now. The last year was really moving from commercial pilots to commercial implementations. And right now it's just looking into how we can scale this thing up.
Yeah, and if I had one other quick question, Gaurav, so I totally understand and see the benefit from an insurance company perspective. How do you see the benefit, say, from an end user perspective, so the actual ultimate users who use the product?
Yeah, it comes down to a few things in terms of how it is being provided to them by the partner. So whether it's an insurance company, do they get something in return for sharing that data and leading a good lifestyle itself? So I think that's where the whole use case is. And number two, from an end user's perspective, it's low touch, high intelligence. If you go out today and get yourself any fitness tracker, it will give you so many different data points, from your resting heart rate to your heart rate variability, deep sleep, REM sleep, calories burned. But what does it mean to an average Joe? So that's where the composite scoring mechanism comes in. It helps you to understand the score is good or bad. And if it is bad, these are the various aspects of the lifestyle that you need to work on and help you improve. So that's one aspect of how we take in all that data and make those journeys simple for that end user. So it's low touch, high intelligence, and when they interact, we give them a lot of insights that actually help them to make better decisions. Yeah.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Hi, Gaurav. This is Eunice from Monks Hill.
Hello.
Great to see you again. And congratulations on all the great traction since we last spoke. Just a very quick one on my end, piggybacking off of David's question. On monetization, right? How much of your revenue is coming from implementation fees versus recurring revenue?
Last year, it was really around 60-40. This year, we have a clear line of sight around $3.5 million. 50% of that would be implementation, and half of it is recurring itself. Yeah. And our average contract durations around 2 years. For example, we're signing a 5-year contracts with the insurance companies because they're saying you cannot go away because our insurance product life cycles are 10, 15, 20 years. So yeah, so once we get someone on board, it stays on year on year. Yeah. Our retention is also tied to the retention of some of those insurance products in certain cases. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Gaurav, maybe building off of that, can you share a little bit more what the engagement uptick looks like since implementation?
Sure. I think I'll just give you one example. I'll not take the insurance name, but just in India, when we looked at it, so to tell you that for that particular product for which Activo enabled services was available, we looked at around 1 million policyholders. Out of those 1 million policyholders, 250,000 of them downloaded the application. Out of the 250,000, 150,000 of them actually gave consent to generate their lifestyle scores. Now, this has been on for 10 months right now. The difference last month between the 150 who were generating a lifestyle score versus 100,000 who were not generating a lifestyle score, the MAU difference was 42% to 5% monthly active users. So that just gives us an understanding of some of the traction or the engagement numbers that we are creating. On the corporate side, where we deliver the Activo application as is, we have more than years worth of data. So year-on-year retention has been in that range of 40 to 50%. And that also depends on the markets and what kind of incentives, programs, if there are in place by the corporates itself. So you see it that way.
And maybe around markets, could you share also how does the score and user journeys get reflected differently based on different markets like Philippines v. Indonesia? Does the model adjust for geo and cultural differences?
The score is standard globally, I would say it that way. So how the insurers want to use to get that risk is the same way they use it to calibrate risk across markets to get in some market data. But of course, some final elaborated journeys when we have journeys on nutrition, we have journeys on conversations around mental well-being. Those have to be localized. But the Activo score per se, it is a global score. So we are going to go live in Latin America as well. They're just going to use the same score to plug in that risk itself. Yeah. But the scoring mechanism, okay.
That's your 5 minutes. Thank you so much for that pitch and for answering all of the judges' questions. But we do have to move on to our next startup for this afternoon, which is hailing from Kazakhstan. We have Dozang from Cerebra, which develops medical software for automated stroke diagnosis using machine learning algorithms. Dozang, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you.
All right, I see you've shared your screen. So if you're good to go, your 5 minutes starts now.
Okay. Hello, my name is Dos. I'm CEO and co-founder of Cerebra. We are emergency tech startup. So we help people in the emergency condition of having stroke attack. Our startup started in 2018. So far, we raised $1.3 million US. Our startup won a dozen of awards. And here are the 4 major ones. For example, Medtronic from US believes we are top 10 in Asia Pacific region in medical AI startups. Bayer from Germany believes we are top 4 startup in digital health in CIS, in Russian-speaking countries. Ernst & Young believes we are best innovative startup in Caspian region. And Quest Ventures, our investor from Singapore, they keep believing in us. Actually, they just issued us a commitment for another $500K US investment for coming round. So why startups like ours even exist? Because there is this huge gap between the supply of radiologists. In order to prepare radiologists, you have to spend 11, 15 years of studying on very expensive medical school. At the same time, the demand for CT, MRI scans is always growing. And the only actual solution to fill this kind of gap is medical AI. And when it comes to stroke, it becomes even more relevant. Stroke is the worst global epidemic ever, because 1/3 of global healthcare expenditure is spent on stroke. Probability-wise, 1 in 4 people will get stroke during their lifetime. And comparing even to COVID, stroke kills 37% of people. COVID kills only 1% of people. In absolute figures, stroke kills 5.5 million each year. COVID just 6 million since its outbreak for 2.5 years. And there is no magic pills, there is no vaccine, there is no therapy, because stroke is disease of lifestyle. Everyone has power to reduce their risk, like by, for example, quit smoking or alcohol, but no one really does. So the only feasible and practical solution for stroke is emergency care, intensive care. And in this case, the crucial factor is timing. You have to do very accurate and very fast diagnosing. And this is actually the first problem we are trying to solve. During the first 6 and 8 hours of stroke, person has a lot of symptoms, neurological loss, but still the radiologist cannot really detect the early signs of stroke during the first these hours, because human eye cannot detect minor changes happening in the brain tissue during this timing on CT scan. And we help them do it during these hours. We help them try to solve this problem. Another problem is the prevalence of human factor in stroke management process. We observed that there is huge miscommunication between physicians of like neurosurgeons, neurologists. There is huge difference in qualification of physicians. And we solve this problem as well. Our solution is web native, cloud native. It has web interface, mobile interface, and our AI identifies stroke within 3 minutes. And we do it using the existing hardware in hospitals. As you can see, there is the interface of our system. We have finished 3 models based on CT scan. Now we are in progress of developing MRI, CTP, and CTA. So far, our system has 30,000 patients coming from 25 hospitals, which is 34% of our local stroke market in Kazakhstan. Our system is approved for medical use by our Ministry of Healthcare, and now we are in progress of amending our stroke guideline in our country, and by that we're going to cover 100% of our local market. Going abroad, we have concluded agreements with Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan. We have support of Turkey Republic to enter Turkey market. We have agreement to launch beta testing in Asan Hospital in Seoul. And also we have some good leads coming from Germany, from Azerbaijan. This is the statistics and feedbacks of our 2 customers from 2 hospitals of different cities. We are helping them to increase the successful neurosurgeries when it comes to stroke, and also thrombolysis therapy, which is medicine for stroke. Market potential for stroke detection is huge because 2 competitors of ours are already unicorns. There are 26,000 stroke units worldwide. The medical imaging market is growing. It's believed to be growing 45% per annum the next 5 years. And it's like 60 billion opportunity per annum. This is competition list. As you can see, we have a lot of competition coming from developed countries like US, like Western Europe, but we are the only solution coming from the reality of developing world. So 70% of all strokes happens in developing world. We are the only solution that really understands the reality of our countries. And we do it 42 times lower funding compared to our competitors.
All right, that's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that pitch. Let's hear from the judges. They might have questions for you and you can explain more on your pitch deck. Judges?
Thanks for your pitch, Johnson. Oh, sorry, David.
Sorry, go ahead, Eunice, go on.
Just a quick one for me. Yeah, no, it sounds like a really great solution. I'm curious, can you talk a little bit more about how it's optimized for the developing world? You mentioned that in your pitch.
Yeah. So in the most countries of the developing world, the only hardware in place is always CT scan when it comes to stroke detection. And they do CT scan for stroke patients, but CT scan without contrast, it shows it is not that sensitive for early stroke patients during the first 6 and 8 hours. Our system AI, it helps see even slightly very minimal differences in the in brain tissue during these hours. So we help physicians actually see the signs of early stroke.
Gotcha. And a second question for me is, in terms of your go-to-market strategy, I noticed that you're targeting quite a few markets there, right? Germany, South Korea, China. What's the thought process behind why so many markets?
You mean process of entering markets?
Yeah, I see that you've struck partnerships with various hospitals.
Yeah. For example, in Turkey, in Uzbekistan, we go for licensing. We license local distributor to do business for us, and in Kazakhstan we go for subscription with government. In many countries, stroke is like government paying disease, so in most cases it's like B2G system, and you have to spend a lot of time establishing this kind of relationship between you and government and to get all local certification, regulatory approvals. So this is the most obstacle. And when we have local partner who really understand this process, we go for local partner to do this for us.
Hi, Dos and David here from Johnson & Johnson. Wonderful, and hi, nice to meet you. Wonderful presentation and great to see the work that you've done. Tell me if I'm wrong, as I understand it, what you're addressing is a shortage in the doctors and radiologists. So instead of that, then obviously you've perfected this sort of technology. What I'm wondering, how is it that patients kind of get to engage with this, with that kind of product? Is it that the patient goes to hospital with a specific feeling unwell, or how do you kind of get patients in front of your machine in the hospital, and how does that work?
I see. So when it comes to stroke, a patient is not that conscious because stroke attacks brain, And like it always like relatives of a patient that takes him to hospital, like stroke unit, and according to stroke guideline in the unit, they have to do the CT scan within 40 minutes. So when they do CT scan, we obtain this raw image and we process it and we respond in the form of ready-to-use conclusion for radiologists, for neurosurgeons. Actually, the neurosurgeons are like the most wide users of ours.
Okay, okay. And did I pick up, Dusan, that your customer base is primarily B2G, so hospitals and so certainly my experience of that is that it is a very challenging market to sell into B2G. Is that the case for you as well?
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, but when you succeed for long. For example, in Kazakhstan, we are in process of getting the 10-year offtake contract with our government.
Yeah, and Dusan, one last question for me. And the B2G contracts are government funded, is it, or is it donor funded contracts?
Government funded.
Government funded. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Just two quick questions for me. One, what are some risks you observed from your AI model so far? And then secondly, how do you measure impact as a team so far?
Okay, so we compared our system in several hospitals in our country compared to average radiologist, and the average radiologist actually detects like 60% accuracy of cases. When it comes to our solution, we detect the hemorrhagic stroke like 99% accuracy. We differentiate hemorrhagic stroke to ischemic stroke very well, and also when it comes to ischemic stroke, we detect it like 80% accuracy, and we do it even faster, like comparing to people. So AI works better than people.
And as it pertains to impact metrics, do you measure by number of cases who would have otherwise not been detected real time in moment of urgency versus somehow they could, or are you at that point yet?
Yeah. We got impact metrics coming from hospitals, and it is, like it's based on the successful rate of neurosurgeries for stroke patients. Because when you have very fast and accurate diagnosis, you can do like the riskiest method of treatment, which is thromboectomy. And thromboectomy actually works very well for stroke patients. It stops the brain damage and helps actually. In my view, it is the only solution for stroke patient, and physicians become more confident to do this kind of surgery.
All right, thank you so much, Dos. That's your 5 minutes up for Q&A. Thank you for your presentation and for answering all these questions. Next up, we have another startup from Singapore, Haemtrics. Haemtrics is a rapid point-of-care diagnostic platform for testing an array of hormones, resulting in reliable and quantitative data within 30 minutes. Priya, welcome to the stage.
Hello, hi. So nice to be here.
It's nice to have you here. We can see your screen, so
seems
you're all good to go. So your 5 minutes will start now.
Okay. So thanks everybody. So today probably we are the youngest startup here. We are one year old exactly today. And so we know there has been a global increase in PCOS, subfertility and menopause disorders. In Singapore alone, 1 in 10 women suffer from PCOS and 1 in 6 couples face subfertility issues. And the hormone measurement and therapy of this is vital for the treatment and prognosis. And this hormone measurement requires diagnosis of this requires repeated and dynamic blood testing. So the current system is such that the analyzers that can measure these blood are unaffordable by 95% of the clinics worldwide. And there is also a severe shortage of trained lab technicians, because of which most of the hospitals outsource these blood tests. And this causes a lengthy test turnaround time. And the clinicians do not have control over the value chain, such as the pricing or the test turnaround time. All this made today the diagnostic markets to be a supplier market in suppliers market. And at the end of the day, it's the women who are making several trips to labs and clinics for one diagnosis. And how does this overlook the urgency of the women health diagnosis, the current system? Is because these hormone values that are clinically relevant only during menstrual cycle. That means women on their day 2 or their day 3 of their period have to go deposit the blood sample. Even if it's weekend, if the labs are not open, they still have to have the data. And the subfertility treatment and conception is only possible during the fertility window, which immediately follows the menstrual cycle. So there is a very short time span for the results to arrive at the clinician's desk. And also there is a need for evidence-based dose adjustment in terms of hormonal stimulation, which is the case in most of the assisted reproductive technologies. And currently what happens is that either the previous month's data is being used, or doctors through their experience decide on a dosage. So there is a bit of a trial method here, which also emphasizes that there is a need for a evidence-based decision making here. And not to forget the social and cultural influence that is around this topic, because women don't want to be seen around a fertility clinic multiple times in certain countries. And these women are like in the peak of their careers. We see women, getting their days disrupted by rather making such appointments to labs and clinics. So Haemtrics was born to break the inaccessibility of such modern technology by the smaller clinics. We are building a point of care technology device that can measure a comprehensive array of female health associated hormones. So our device is quantitative, rapid, and it is 10x cheaper than the cheapest analyzer. And this is because it is specially curated for women's health to make the diagnostics patient and clinician centric. So with the product concept, so when a patient walks into the clinic, they submit their blood sample, and the device, Haemtrics device, analyzes the sample, and the test results are provided quantitatively in 30 minutes, followed by which there is a doctor consultation all in one go. And coming to the analyzer, which is our part, there is two parts to it. One is the sample holder and second is the analyzer. The sample holder requires 200 microliter of blood to test 4 samples. Our biology and the microfluidics here is our proprietary technology, as well as the patentable, which is also our defensible mode that we are building around the device. And our electronics is the off-the-shelf, but top of the notch, enabled with IoT for upgrades and troubleshooting. And our analyzer has to measure dynamic range because this is a diagnostic device, and the accuracy and precision is comparable to gold standard, which is currently the laboratory techniques of measurement. So we are starting our clinical trial with KKH Women's Hospital from August 2022, come in August. And we are proud to do this because KKH was the first hospital to deliver an IVF baby in Asia. And so coming to the growth drivers of our market, there are some reasons like the increase in lifestyle-related diseases, which is responsible for PCOS and infertility rates. And there has also been an increasing first-time pregnancy age because of the declining, leading to the declining fertility rate. And there has been a demand for evidence-based health monitoring, as well as awareness of for preventive diseases and wellness. So our entry market will be Singapore. And this is because the HSA approval is regarded with a highly in and around Singapore. So this HSA approval will enable us to enter the ASEAN market, India and Middle East easily, where we want to be in the next 5 years. And for our business model, for the customer acquisition, because we are challenging the status quo with the state of our device, and we will be retailing with our sales team and distributors and e-commerce platforms. And apart from this, we will also partner with government welfare schemes, medical association and medical institutions that are particular about women's health in a rural setting, or where there is a need for such a device, or for where there is a shortage of trained technicians. And for monetization, we are employing the razor and blade pricing strategy, where the sample holder is like per sample per use, and periodical release of new biomarkers to cover the entire spectrum of hormones related to female health for customer retention. And
Priya, sorry to cut you off, but that's your 5 minutes. So let's move on to your question and answers. Judges, any questions for Priya?
Hi, Priya. David here from JJ. Question for you. Something like that, obviously, it's still in early stage, and as you're about to kind of go to market. Tell me about the development of it, because obviously it seems like quite a complicated thing to put together, and the research that went into it.
So here is where, like Ramya and I, both me and my co-founder, we are PhD in biomedical engineering and biochemistry, and Ramya has led the R&D team and successfully launched a point of care diagnostic kit for COVID-19, which is being currently used in 4 different countries. And apart from which, we have commercial and clinical advisors for us. And when it comes to the product development phase, the biology and microfluidics part of it is where our edge or technical edge comes in, whereas the electronics is off the shelf. And then comes the clinical trial for us. So this is how our roadmap looks like. So after our R&D, we go into the regulatory starting August. And then is the validation and manufacturing partners, followed by the launch in Singapore market.
Brilliant. Yeah. And what is your plans in terms of regulatory endorsement for the next various sort of stages? Do you plan to have conversations with a number of different regulatory bodies, or what's happening there?
So right now we are focused on our clinical trial that starts next month, because that will enable us to get a HSA approval. And HSA approval sort of opens our market widely in terms of like ASEAN countries. In ASEAN, we are focused on Thailand and Vietnam to begin with because of our advisors who are located in such countries. And next comes the Middle East and India. And eventually we want to go into US, but that's something that it's not in our next 5-year pipeline.
Hi, Priya. Thanks for
Hello.
the presentation. 2 quick questions for me. The first is, have you done any market sizing analysis to understand what the women's health diagnostics market looks like? And the second question is a related question. Is it within your roadmap to start to target other diagnostics as well?
So to answer your first question, yeah, we know the market which is growing. The largest market is North America for us. And when it comes to APAC, which is what we are immediately focusing, it is growing at a CAGR of 15.5%. The market is about $5 billion right now. And so what we want to be in, this is what the market that I just mentioned is purely the fertility clinics. What I have not mentioned is also the nutrition and wellness, who also at the end of the day measure hormones, because this is growing currently. And so our immediate target would be to reach the fertility clinics, particularly the small clinics that cannot afford large analysis. Eventually, we want to go further. Coming to the second question, yeah, there is about 8 to 10 hormones when it comes to women's health. The limitation of our technology is that it can only measure up to 4, but we want to eventually release other markers as well, so that we can cover a wide range. And eventually we want to focus into miscarriage markers, which is another area where the point of care will definitely come into place, as well as the sexually transmitted diseases, but surrounding women's health.
Do you have a sense of what your pricing is going to be like?
We have an idea that at the current rate for all these 4 hormones is about $350 in Singapore. Our cost to manufacture is $15. So we are well within the range. So we don't know otherwise how to launch, but we know that we don't want to set the pricing as much as the current price, because we are a startup. We want to play a bit safe in the first 1 year when we started, but eventually we do see that it has the capacity to be a premium product in certain countries.
Thank you.
Hi, Priya. Interesting.
Hello.
Market. We've seen quite a bit of these diagnostic tools, but for you to focus on the fertility use case is interesting. 2 questions. One, how many of the other markets share the same problem where blood testing is outsourced, thereby there's a long lead time? Secondly is, as you head into clinical trial, what are some risks or weaknesses to your model? Just now you mentioned maybe the number of hormones detected, but beyond that, what are there some potential risk factors to getting the trials approved?
Okay. Thank you. So to answer the first question, most of these tests are outsourced for now. And some of them are like, for example, thyroid, which will also be used for fertility related panel. Why we haven't included that right now is because these hormones that we have chosen currently have a timeline, because these are the hormones, like I mentioned, either have to be measured on day 2 or day 3 of the menstrual cycle, or they are biologically very sensitive, that we know that when they are shipping, even if there is a temperature drop, the clinicians don't get the desired results that they want. So that drove us to do a point of care for these 4 biomarkers. And there are other biomarkers which we eventually want to venture into. There is a scope, for like other markers as well for prolactin, etc., which is also progesterone, which is also tested in case of male infertility. And for the clinical risk regarding the clinical trial, it would be the multiplexing of all the 4 biomarkers that will be our risk, because by one itself is doable. Our ambition here comes by multiplexing 4. We know that in theory it works, but how that works from a whole blood sample under those circumstances is something that is our risk right now. But these biomarkers or hormones by itself have a market of their own. Like right now we are going to do with AMH, and AMH by itself has a market for being a point of care testing. So we have chosen such hormones to reduce our
cut
risk.
you off again, but that's your 5 minutes for Q&A. Thank you so much for your pitch. We're going to move on to our fourth startup for tonight, which is hailing from Indonesia. Periksain is the newness in Indonesia's health platform that connects people, medical laboratories, and phlebotomists together. Gilang, are you ready for your pitch?
Just let me know if you can see my deck.
Yes, we can see your deck.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so if you're all good to go, your 5 minutes will start now.
Hey everyone, thanks for the time. I'm glad to meet you all judges. I'm Dr. Gilang Pratama as a founder and CEO of Periksain. In Indonesia, 64% of us feel it's difficult to access healthcare service properly. 32% of them caused by distrust issue, and the rest are caused by several reasons, whether there's insurance matter, facilities overload, or another. Back to 10 years ago when I became a doctor in some rural area here, we faced certain facilities very limited, so it was very difficult for me to serve healthcare and nearly impossible to find the ideal and proper service. Then when the COVID storm is coming, many of our beloved friends and family who couldn't survive because by limited resource and facilities here. In our opinion, those problems are likely to continue for a very long time. What we face in our country is first, unequal distribution of health facilities, considering we're known as archipelagic state. The second, limited access to health professionals. And the third, less technology utilization in healthcare service. We introduce you Periksain, perfect solution to elaborate as the first platform in Indonesia that integrates health facilities, health worker, stakeholders to anyone who needs healthcare through our all service. To be the first individual and family health record for both preventive and curative anytime, anywhere. Today, we have 150,000 patients on board using our service through mobile and website. Our users have continued to increase since the launch of the app this year in January for Android and the next April for iOS, with the current number reaching 13K users. At the existing market, we have only exceeded 0.5% of the number of health application user that reaches 50 million users, which is only 25% of all over internet users in Indonesia. Here is our market potential in Indonesia from year to year has been increased. From the data that we can see until 2021, the potential transaction through digital only reached 2% of the total 470 trillion Indonesian rupiah transaction. In conclusion, the health sector in Indonesia is still very good to going forward. Seeing that potential, we are ready to provide service through several transaction models from B2B, B2C up to B2B2C, with various services for each model. Our main revenue stream currently are coming from user subscription, service commission, and ad spots that spoil everyone's eye. This one is interesting. At this time, we have registered as an official partner of Indonesian Ministry of Health and have joined the only digital health community in Indonesia. We also adopt Hedge Level 7 as a technology startup once we hold also the security license from our ministry. And the rest is we integrate with some software as a system recommendation in some of health facilities. Here is our position to always be your best buddy who always be there anywhere, anytime, defining that we're committed to grow and run with our vision, then becoming health buddy for anyone. Here is we featured in some of well-known media in Indonesia. Also, we do collaborate with well-known also multinational corporation and even have interest us for their health service provider. Here is our future goals. Our journey ahead is still very long with various phases of development that we planned until our big goal to become a life and health buddy for everyone. Here is our solid squad who has experience working in well-known multinational companies. We will always be committed to provide breakthrough and innovation for the healthcare. So here is our first year financial performance. We in fourth quarter in 2021, we have a 41 billion Indonesian rupiah gross transaction value. We managed to record a net profit of 11.16%. And here is our latest operational performance achievement of 150K users has been on board, dozens of health facilities partner, and health working with our current team is 35 people internal. Currently, we're seeking for $1 million that will spend mostly for product R&D to always serve better quality with suitable technology. And that's our last question, our last slide. I mean, thanks for your attention. Welcome aboard for Periksain family and prepare to be part of Indonesia's pride digital healthcare service. And Periksain always be your buddy for living healthy forever. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Gilang.
Thanks,
Can we
Gilang, for
move
your
on to the
presentation.
judges? Yes, Eunice has a question.
In the interest of time. Gilang, what's your customer acquisition strategy for the 150K patients that you've onboarded? And can you talk a little bit about what the user engagement has been like?
Sorry, for the user acquisition, for this 150K, we are reaching by our social media. We find in Instagram, and we collaborate with some of Indonesian influencer. And also this is we usually to do that every 2 weeks. We have like we comes to the office, door to door to the office. We have some roundtable discussion about the health. We join also with some practitioners in every city in Indonesia. Because currently we have been our service can be found in 5 cities in Indonesia, from Jakarta, Surabaya, and other big city here. Actually, our target is the millennial. So sorry, can you repeat the second question?
The second question was what if you have anything to share about user engagement in terms of the I think MAU ratio and how many times are they using your app a day, right? What do they use it for?
Actually, our user currently we have active user for in our apps is about 1 to 2K daily. I mean, from the data from the Google, I mean from the Android base. But from our there is a lot since COVID comes in Indonesia. There is a lot of health awareness in Indonesia has been increased, and this is helping us also to get this potential number, and this is helping us to get this number and will helping us also for the future in our potential market.
Hi, Gilang. Couple of questions. Did I pick up you are focused on B2B, B2C, and then also B2B2C? And I just wondered how you can manage that sort of diversified sort of strategy across the sort of 3 kind of approaches. That sort of strikes me that could be quite challenging. And then the other one I just wanted to try and understand was your kind of pricing. I think that I pick up 150,000 customers, and what your pricing looks like to kind of drive the current revenues you're getting.
Okay, for the first question, we split our sales team for the B2B. B2B, we currently are choosing the national distributor for our license service. And for the B2C, we are currently our own handling by our apps. And for the B2B2C, we give them like a dashboard for every clinic or every other partners that we can using, or they will help us to distribute our service. And the second, for the current pricing, if in our current product that that will be our first project success is the home care service. And for the home care service, we try to connect it all from the hospital, clinic, and the health workers. And the pricing also is depends into the each hospital, each health workers also. Health workers, it means we have a lot of 1,000 phlebotomists on board currently. We have also nurse and my midwife for this kind like home service. And because of this because of this various hospital segment also, that's why our own user can choose what can they afford to their health, and it will be very suitable for them to choose in any hospital or any health worker they need. Thanks.
I'm going to double click on Eunice's question. Can you share a little bit more around like repeat purchase, upselling, cross-selling based on the users who've transacted one service? And what do some of those engagement look like?
Okay, we do cross-selling also because we have a corporate medical balance that we currently set this program up with some peer-to-peer lending in Indonesia. We give like some corporate like let's say like $100,000 for the employee. It depends to the skill of each corporate, and then we took some commission from this transaction. We cross-sell with our current service like home care, telemedicine, or something like that. And this balance can be purchased only with our apps. And with this kind of cross-selling and this transaction, we hope we can get this fraction about 50 to 70% from our current user on board. Thanks. Is there any second question?
All right. Thank you so
Okay,
much,
thank you.
Gilang. Thank you, judges, for
Okay.
this question.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to our next startup, which hails from Malaysia. Let's invite Tilak from ActionalMD. ActionalMD is a platform technology company leveraging scalable open source technologies, architecting truly patient-centric applications. Tilak, are you ready?
I'm ready. Can you see my screen?
No, I cannot. Could you try sharing it again? Okay. Okay, so if you're all good to go, your 5 minutes starts now.
Thank you all. My name is Dr. Tilak. We are probably the second youngest startup in this group. We are less than 2 years old. We are trying to build platforms and engagement services between these three stakeholders, being patients, providers. Providers for us are anybody who delivers healthcare, be it clinic, hospital, lab, pharmacy, etc., and payers as well. So what we see, if we take a step back as the healthcare system in 2022, simple common man on the street would think that a healthcare system, is at the center. Around it orbit the doctors, and in there orbit our patients. But what it really is, it's a very complicated system which is less transparent and more like a black hole, with patients and doctors finding it difficult to navigate the system. So what we would like to see or make it happen is to see if we can put the patient at the center of this ecosystem, doctors in their orbit, and the system itself functioning more transparently. Yeah. So this is an interesting slide which shows the very beginning of the patient journey. This is when patients actually reach out with their signs and symptoms, and this is illustrated is a study done by NEJM over a period of twice. They have done the similar study over a period of 40 years, 61 and 2001. And what they find is patients getting, reaching out to healthcare stakeholders in various care levels and missing out on the primary care level, which is the primary filter which should be for any healthcare system. So the initial stage is where we are focusing on as well, where we are trying to navigate them through these three questions, like how can I understand my symptoms better? Where can I find out more about my condition? And if I'm sick, where should I go to get better? Now, this again is an interesting slide which shows any chronic illness patient living with chronic disease, 365 days with the disease. And let's assume he goes to a provider twice or thrice a year. The recall period for the things which are happening with them would only last for 7 to 10 days. So all the information which is happening throughout the year is kind of filtered out and is not summarized back to the provider. So this is something which we are trying to see if we can build a symptom registry which can act as a digital biomarker and give a more comprehensive picture to the providers. Yeah. So this is a slide which obviously tells the market value. You can take it with a pinch of salt. In the Malaysian context, this is the uptake of digital tools per se in the last 1-2 years. It has been quite good, and Malaysians have adopted digital healthcare tools. So it's quite positive. So what we have put up is a platform which can address these blind spots between these providers. Yeah. So we have built tools along the patient journey, complementing their reach out, their engagement with providers, and providers' engagement with payers, and back-to-back payers' engagement to provide with patients as well. So these are tools like self-assessment tools, which are AI and ML-based tools for patients, doing digital triaging for them, navigating through their care journeys, putting up some communication tools for them to reach out to providers, which can be synchronous and asynchronous. And then on the on the provider side, we went very strong on the structured documentation pieces so that any interaction or communication which happens with the providers, or rather payers, we would like to see how best we can give back more structured data for processes, backend processes to happen faster. Yeah. So from a patient perspective, what we have put through is some self-assessment tools where they can key in a few symptoms, and then the tool picks up a list of conditions which are probably happening above those symptoms. They answer a few queries, and then we point them to a level of care. Yeah, so we do some digital triaging. Now, the tool itself is a very natural language tool, unlike some of our competitors who do a very long question and answer spree, which actually puts them off. So there are many they are so-called symptom checkers in the market. But what we do is like a Google search engine, where they can express themselves very freely, and it comes through. Yeah. Besides that, we are trying to see how best we can capture other biomarkers, like we use a simple tech called photoplethysmography. Remotely, if you use it with some optical light, we are able to pick up things like heartbeat, respiratory rate, etc., which then we compile all of these together and are able to provide to the provider in a structured format. So being with the above assessments, we are able to provide some curated healthcare services. So providers, content, etc. And whilst doing all this, going through
Sorry
our
to cut you off,
journeys.
Tilak, but that's your 5 minutes.
Oh my God.
So we're going to move on to the Q&A. Judges,
Okay.
do you have any questions for Dr. Tilak?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Hi, Tilak. Quick question. Just trying to understand the kind of product and I think where you were landing as a sort of symptom checker. And I've sort of seen tools like this. Sometimes they can be quite complicated to deal with and to understand. How have you worked your own kind of tools so that patients can engage, use, and understand how to input and also the test results?
Yeah, so this self-assessment tool is a machine learning tool. So it is accepting input in a very natural way, allowing every input which happens from the patient perspective. So they can just say whatever things are happening with them along with their, let's say, labs or whatever it might be. So, but in a textual format, once it comes through, the algorithm runs through and indicates to them which level of care they might want to get to, doing a digital triage on top of that, right? But this tool itself, we are able to make it bespoke for other providers. So we sit in various ecosystems. We do a B2B2C. So our B2Bs are various ecosystems. So we have people like digital nutrition platforms. We have, third-party administrators. All of them use this tool very differently to engage with their members or patients. Yeah.
And why would you see a patient using your tool just as opposed to just going to see a provider, a medical provider? What's the incentive?
The incentive is care continuity. So in between your interactions with the patient directly, what you are able to give them is means to express their conditions on a continuous manner. So you are trying to build a kind of a continuum tool with your patients for that engagement. So chronic conditions, right? It is not like that you're hand-holding him throughout every day of the year, but you need input from them on what happened between these visits as well. So engagement tools like this bring back this information in a very structured format. But my interaction with the patient, let's say those 15, 20 minutes which I have, I need it to be summarized in a structured format for me to make sense of it. And in my own mind to create a differential diagnosis of where it is all going.
Right, Silak, thanks for the presentation. I know you ran out of time, but can you share a bit more about your traction so far, and also what is your go-to-market strategy?
So this is what we are doing. We work, we do some large pilots with 2 third-party administrators, payable pilots with a member size of about 500,000. These third-party administrators are above the clearinghouses. Yeah, in Malaysia there are a bunch of them who actually interact between corporates and large provider networks. Right? So for corporate employees, we create something called virtual first benefits, where we try to incentivize them by engaging with the tools prior to actual physical contact, which reduces the cost. And by doing so, also being able to create that record, the structured healthcare record. And then we also engage with, on a white label basis with, I just mentioned, the digital nutrition platform. They're a plant-based nutrition platform. So they go after a few biomarkers like body weight, blood glucose, etc. But they do everything on the platform. And by doing that, they create this structured kind of a record for the patient, which they can then interact with their other specialists, for example, cardiologists or whoever it might be. Yeah? We create a digital front door for hospitals, for specialist hospitals. So we are able to navigate or bring the patients to a right level of care, or even within the same specialty. So here in Malaysia, we have this huge cardiology hospital, but within that itself, triaging is very complex. In spite of you knowing that it is only one specialization, it becomes complex between multiple medical versus surgical specialties. And then between the provider to the payer ecosystems as well, where we work a lot with the claim side of things, where we try to make sense of how to enable adjudication in a very intelligent manner with the payers, right? Now, payers seek a lot of data for proper adjudication, but the data comes back in very flat format. So what we are trying to see is how can we bring it back in a more sensible format for payers, but actually making sense to them at the adjudication level. Meaning to say, so it follows their rule systems, which are sadly very rule-based, the insurance adjudication system. So when we bring this information, we are bringing it right from the beginning of the journey, meaning from the patient to the provider back to the payer. So we do that. Other ecosystems where we are doing some genomic reports personalization. We work with some genomic companies. We also do some data work with medical device companies, where we actually provide them digital tools for them to do health technology assessment projects. So we work with this large cardiology valve manufacturer who is able to substantiate his device cost with the information which is coming through. And we have
a very quick follow-up. Sorry, conscious of time. Have any of these converted into contracts, or are they still POC pilots?
Contracts. Most of them are contracts. Yeah, only the first two which I said was POC pilots, but most of them are contracts. And yeah, early revenues.
All right, Dr. Tilak, that's all the time we have for your Q&A.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much for that pitch and for answering all of the judges' questions.
Great, thanks.
All right, so moving on to our final startup for today. From Indonesia, we have ZiCare. Let's please welcome Jesse from ZiCare to the stage. ZiCare produces a hospital information system with structured electronic medical record that uses intuitive workflows to support clinicians throughout the patient visit. Jesse, how are you doing? Can you share?
Yes, good. Yeah, sure. Hi, nice to meet you all. Thanks for your time. Let me share my screen so we can start. Can anyone see my screen?
Yep, we can all see your screen.
Unfortunately, the camera turned off when I'm presenting. So yeah, so I think it's because I'm using the iPad.
No worries.
So,
Okay, so
yeah.
if you're all ready, we're gonna let your 5 minutes start now.
All right. Hi, I'm Jesse. I'm a founder and CEO of ZiCare, an electronic medical record technology company from Indonesia. The Indonesian healthcare system is the worst in Southeast Asia and one of the worst in the world. Comparing with Singapore, we are half behind in numbers of beds, doctors, and nurses. The result is long patient queues at hospitals and poor patient care. To make things worse, our primary system is inefficient. 80% of medical records are still paper-based. This has resulted a staggering $6 billion delay on government insurance claims payment. ZiCare is the answer. We will raise the standards of Indonesian healthcare with electronic medical record level 7 technology. It's the standards medical record in places like US, China, Singapore, and other advanced countries. We are the first and the only Indonesian state-of-the-art complete electronic medical record system designed for hospitals and patients. Hospitals that are now using ZiCare EMR are 30% more efficient, and their insurance claim to disbursement ratio increased by 30%. Overall, more efficient hospital provides better healthcare to their patients. We are growing really fast. We started with 1 hospital in 2019. We have grown hugely in just 2 years, and now we are at 81 hospitals using our system. Hospitals in Indonesia are notoriously hard to sell to, but we've been able to do it. We understand the specific problems hospitals in Indonesia face. We've been able to build a system that gives them what they need the most. We incorporated the automations of insurance claim submissions for hospital into our system, meaning a much healthier and faster cash flow. COVID has truly exposed Indonesian inefficient healthcare system and has pushed the need for digitalization to the forefront. This has been a catalyst for our growth, and the demand has skyrocketed since. Our sales teams swamped by them. The EMR market in Indonesia is huge. There are almost 3,000 hospitals, 10,000 clinics, and 270 million patients. With all those, the TAM is $1 billion. The US has 2 unicorn EMR companies. China has 2 unicorn EMR companies. India has 1 unicorn EMR company, and there are none in the Southeast Asia. ZiCare will be the first unicorn EMR company in region. Look, we already have more hospitals compared to the major players. Competitors don't understand the local landscape. Prices are far too high for Indonesian hospitals to afford, and the system does not cater for the specific problem Indonesia faces. ZiCare is built in Indonesia, catered for Indonesian healthcare, and priced for Indonesia, while delivering the same gold standard level 7 EMR quality. Every hospitals and clinic in Indonesia are going to use ZiCare. We are going to conquer this through the enhancements of our partnerships with Ministry of Health, hospital associations, biggest telco company, biggest bank, and the largest Islamic organizations that part of our strategic investors. We are the right people to do it. I've spent more than 10 years designing the system for 3 largest government hospitals in Indonesia. I've seen so many room for improvement in Indonesia healthcare industry. Together with co-founder, and we are also supported by high caliber advisor from medical sectors and also former prominent professional. What our user says about our system. Here we go.
Tanggapan saya tentang ZiCare adalah satu tools yang dapat membantu baik dokter maupun manajemen.
Program ini sangat memudahkan untuk pengisiannya,
yang sangat menyamai dengan rekam medik yang sudah tertulis. ZiCare ini memiliki tampilan yang unik, banyak ya item-itemnya lengkap.
Mudah-mudahan para dokter dan para manajemen yang ada di Rumah Sakit Islam ini cepat beradaptasi.
Semoga dapat berjalan dengan lancar dan dapat memudahkan kita semua. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Hi, Jesse. I just have a straightforward question. I didn't see Plato on your competitor grid, and I thought they are fairly advanced in Southeast Asia. So how do you bench against a player like that?
Okay, so Practal is actually from India. They've been present in Indonesia for quite some times, but they don't actually touch the hospital. They mostly play in the laboratories and small clinics. Because as I mentioned earlier, the hospital is very, very notoriously hard to sell to, especially the doctors and the medical guys in Indonesia. It's quite traditional compared to our neighbors.
And as such, for you to focus in the hospital segment over clinics, how does that affect your unit economics?
I think now we are all, I think the main bread and butter that we are focusing is in the hospital, because that's basically all the data, all the transactions, the biggest transactions happening currently. So once we conquer them, we also receive some requests from the smaller clinics to implement, but we haven't really get to focus on that smaller market. But we already cater some of them, but we don't have any yet focus on that.
And Jesse, sorry, go ahead, Eunice.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, a question here. This is a fascinating area, Jesse, and a big supporter of electronic medical records. Also love the idea of the record being as comprehensive a record of somebody's kind of medical history and journey as possible, and would love to understand more about that, because, you know, it's sort of some of the cases that I've looked at, and I think your customer base are primarily hospitals. But recognizing that patients go to different hospitals, have different sort of, you know, interactions with different doctors. So there's to get that comprehensive medical record, you know, you would need to have that kind of full picture. Wonder how you deal with that?
Yeah, so that's exactly what the electronic medical record is all about. It's about the connectivity, the integrations of data, regardless wherever, which facilities you are going to. As I mentioned also in my slide, we've been lucky enough to be invested by one of the largest Muslim organizations that fortunately also having 140 hospitals across Indonesia and more than, I think, almost 1,000 clinics across Indonesia. So the main goal for them to invest on us is actually, we help them to digitize their healthcare facility. And also, by doing that, the healthcare data, the health record data from every person's that going to all the facilities is connected, and it also integrated. So that's how we actually, yeah.
One other quick question for me. So can the patient, the actual patient access the record?
Yeah, with mobile apps that we have, but it's not the full EMR. We call it a personal health record. So some kind of executive summaries of the EMR, because I think in regulations in Indonesia, we cannot have, the patient cannot see the whole EMR data. It's only the personal health record that they can see.
Hi, Jesse. Thanks for the presentation. Would love to dive a little bit deeper into your sales processes, right? To your point, you know, hospitals in Indonesia are just, well, anywhere really, are notoriously hard to sell to, right? Can you talk a little bit more about, you know, what are the different segments you're targeting? Are these, you know, private hospital chains? Are they public hospitals? How big are they? And how do your sales processes and strategies differ?
So as I also boldly stated on my presentations, every hospital will use ZiCare. So basically, we are not specifically designed for a single hospital. We try to provide the solution for the hospital in general, whether it's chain hospitals or single hospital, small hospitals, large hospitals, specialist hospitals. So we cater every kind of the hospitals. The way we do it is by the cooperations with banks and largest telco. Telkomsel is the largest telco company. It's part of our investor as well. So they will come to this hospital using their sales force and introduce us as part of their solutions. And we kind of, you know, get the introduction from them, and we will follow through after that.
Have you seen more traction from the larger hospital groups then, or, you know, small?
Yeah, I would say in the past 6 months, I've seen the sales that really breaking record, our previous record. I've never seen anything like that before in 5 years of ZiCare.
And is ZiCare meant to replace existing legacy systems, or is it more like a plug and play approach where it can plug into existing?
We can be both. We can be both. If the hospital has already some system that running, we can be a complementaries to their system, but with some term of and conditions as well. But if the hospital has, they want to replace everything, then we can also do that approach.
All right, thank you so much, Jesse. And thank you, judges, as well, for those questions. And that's all of our pitches for today. Big thank you to all the startups who've put themselves out there and pitched their businesses. And of course, thank you to our judges, Jen, Eunice, and David, for taking the time to listen to these very promising budding entrepreneurs. Now, our judges have a monumental and difficult decision to make, and you can participate at home in that decision-making as well. So if you look at your Zoom window, you should see a poll pop out that we just launched where you can let us know who your favorite startup of the day is. In the meantime, the judges are going to step away to deliberate on who tonight's winner will be. So let's keep the conversation going with some of my colleagues from the Tech in Asia newsroom. Please welcome Nikita Puri and Putra Muskita. Hey Nikita, hey Putra, how are you guys doing?
Hi Nat.
Hey Nat, pretty good. How are you?
I'm great. So let's talk about these pitches that we've just seen. I want to know which pitch really stood out to you guys and why that pitch stood out. Maybe let's start with Nikita.
Actually, before we get into that, I want to ask Putra a question. So, as our Indonesia expert, would you agree with what one of the participants said about Indonesia having the worst healthcare infrastructure in Southeast Asia? What are your feelings on that?
I would agree, to be honest. and this is even coming from somebody who's basically, I was born and raised in Jakarta and I live there currently. And, I think compared to the rest of the country, obviously we have the best healthcare standards compared to like maybe some of their more remote provinces. But I definitely would agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork still, in 2022, which is really surprising. And I think what's been great is that we do have government like sponsored healthcare now, which actually, obviously it's good for you to get, a lot of medical attention for sure. But then it does add to like some complexities as well, right? Because there's like an additional, I guess, more paperwork. Yeah. So many words, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Nikita, am I correct in assuming that the one that stood out to you was one of our Indonesian participants for today?
I do think that is right, because he was very clear about what he was focusing on, and he was very confident in saying that ZiCare is essentially in all hospitals as of now in Indonesia. Like every hospital will use ZiCare, and I don't know, I would like to actually look at that closer because that's a massive, massive task to sort of say that. And to do that is absolutely massive. But I think also who stood out to me was ActivoLabs. They have this multi-pronged approach, which I think would take them pretty far.
Right. And Putra, what about you? Which one of the startups that pitched today stood out?
I think I was pretty interested in what Cerebra is doing because I think, I've definitely seen like people around me like suffering from strokes in the past like couple of decades, I suppose. And it's true that it's really crucial for you to get medical attention as quickly as possible. The moment that you're experiencing some symptoms, I suppose, that's kind of when you're already supposed to be in the emergency room. And I think if you're in an urban area with like a lot of hospitals and things like that, like it's probably not really an issue. But then once you kind of get to like more remote areas in the developing world, for sure, that's where not every hospital has a CT scan, I'm assuming. Not everybody would have like well-trained doctors as well. So if there's a way to kind of improve that part, like that would be a really interesting solution for sure.
Yeah, actually that stat about 1 in 4 people getting a stroke, really stands out.
Yeah.
We are a family of 4, and it actually happened with my father. We had to go from one place to another because they didn't have the proper equipment. And I'm talking about a metro city. So ideally, we should have had this in place. So when we reached the second hospital, the doctors were like, he has to go in for surgery right now because he's having a stroke. And we had been traveling for like 1 hour or so. He was driving himself. So yeah, that was, so what Cerebra is doing is absolutely great. And of course, my concern would be about their contracts because they're B2G. So it's like they can do either really well or really bad. It's just like on either side.
Right. Now, on that note, actually, because you mentioned the B2G thing, I want to talk about the business models that our startups today are approaching their businesses. So which ones do you think had the most interesting business model to the way that they ran their innovations? Maybe let's start with, Nikita, do you have a...
Yeah. Okay. I think I have the same question about Periksain that one of our judges did. How are they going to manage so much for such a young company? Because it's sort of like everywhere. But in that respect, I think ActivoLabs is also doing this model that is B2B to C, and I think that might actually work because ultimately the end user can also use that data, and companies that they tie up with also have access to that, and they are also using that product. So I think it's very rare when something on these lines actually reaches the end customer and you have access to that data and you can study that. I think that is like a real plus.
Putra, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think just generally, I think what it really underscores is really how fragmented the healthcare space is. I think it's really interesting what Cerebra mentioned in their slides as well, which is that stroke is a lifestyle disease, right? It's something that you can actually prevent by making lifestyle changes. But then obviously it kind of goes back to the person, like, is that something that they're willing to do? Is that something they're willing, or like something they're aware of as well? So I think what's really interesting is that everybody has some sort of approach where, you kind of have to work with like the hospitals as well, right? Or like the government, or like some of these like, whether it's like a business or government and things like that, because you don't necessarily, you're not necessarily able to depend entirely on the consumer, right? So you kind of have to work with these bodies as well. And in most cases, like, it's probably even more important, right, to actually get the buy-in of hospitals and other bodies. Yeah.
Also, the stat that Cerebra shared about how radiologists get it right, like 60% accuracy, and Cerebra gets 80%, it made me feel very uncomfortable, not because Cerebra does well, but because they say that radiologists are doing 60%. So I'm all for AI and machine learning. But yeah, that is something definitely we should be all looking into.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think just to add as well, I think what's interesting about Haemtrics as well in particular is because, it deals with reproductive health. So I think I'm at that age where, like, a lot of my friends, I think there's like the time where everybody becomes parents, or like they want to become parents. And I think this is something that people are willing to invest on for sure, because, it's such an important part of a lot of people's lives. So there's probably like a bit more opportunity to kind of get like consumer buy-in there, maybe.
Right, but I think after Theranos, everybody sort of is a little worried about approaching, something that a startup that does test blood, basically. It's just given the rest of the market a really bad name. Also, I think it's just in the ready to be launched stages. They're going to be launching their clinical trials next month onwards. And that's when we will actually see the kind of impact that it can make, or the distance it has to travel before it gets there.
Right. Now, I also want to look at some of the numbers that these startups have presented in their pitches, right? Which one of them did you think like, wow, when you saw their growth trajectory or their prospective growth? Or
I
were
think
they
I'll
all
have
kind
to
of
go.
expected?
I guess I'll have to go with ZiCare, right? Because I feel like if you kind of know how hospital bureaucracies work in Indonesia, just kind of onboard 81 hospitals, I think it's a feat. So I think, yeah, it's a long way to go for sure. But then, it's a pretty promising start, I felt.
Yeah, I think ZiCare did have numbers, but for whatever reason, they're not really tapping into the clinics. I don't know, it could be much more bigger, but it's a good thing to be taking one step at a time, I guess. They can get to the clinics later. But I think ActivoLabs also had a number of, had good numbers to show in terms of, clients and the reach, essentially. They had big partners, which was also interesting.
Now, in terms of the total addressable market, am I right in assuming that most of these startups today kind of have a similar sized addressable market to be able to work with? Or do you think there's one of them that actually has a little bit more opportunities in their future?
So I think Haemtrics might have a smaller market because it's more towards women health diagnostics. So automatically that sort of halves it, but also the fact that we don't have a lot of players doing just that might work in its favor. But otherwise, I think it's sort of a good market for everyone. But I don't think they're all really on the same, it can't be an apple to apple comparison because we are talking about different things. For example, one has an insurance play and the other one is outright a medtech play, like for example, what Cerebra is doing. So I'm not sure if we can answer that question, like I can answer that question properly.
Right. Now, because Nikita, you are based in India, and none of our startups from today came from India. But I'm curious as to whether these startups actually have applications in India, and do you think that that's an opportunity for expansion for all of them, or whether a lot of the things that they're talking about are quite market specific, region specific? What are your thoughts on that?
They are definitely not region specific. In fact, if we did not have Putra and our other participant talking about Indonesia's healthcare, I would be here dissing India's healthcare because it is a mess. It is a mess, and everything that was pitched today can work very well in India. In fact, Haemtrics also wants to get into India, if I'm right. But I would like to point out that I think a lot of founders that we saw today also were of Indian origin. So I think there will be an India play, even if it is not there in the immediate future. But yes, there is definitely an opportunity, but there are also a lot of competitors doing similar things. For example, the EMR. I mean, we already have people doing that, but for some reason doesn't quite, I mean, I don't use it. Why? Because it's just messy and complicated. And I use a lot of tech, but still, it's not comfortable for me. It's not like I'm not happy. And I think the fact is that when you move from hospital to hospital or you see different doctors all the time, having that data all in place is very necessary. But all you get is actually just one file after another file. And after a time, you lose track of all the files. And you have nothing that is actually stored digitally.
Right. Now, Putra, as Nikita called you earlier, you are our resident Indonesia expert. One thing that I keep hearing in the narrative about starting up in Indonesia is that Indonesia's market is so big that it's not much of an issue, or like it's not really top of mind for startups to go beyond the Indonesian market. So for our Indonesian startups today, we had Periksain, we had ZiCare. Do you think that that's the play for them as well? Like, should they focus local and conquer local, or do you think that they would actually have more opportunities in expanding to Southeast Asia, for example?
Yeah, I think for sure it is a really big market. I think we're past 250 million people at this point. So I think conquering this one market, it's probably large enough for a startup to actually, reach profitability or, other similar metrics. And that's something that we've seen in other industries as well, right? Like whether it's e-commerce or fintech. If you're a startup that's like focusing solely on Indonesia, like it's not terribly difficult for you to get funding. I think also if you're somebody who's focusing on Southeast Asia as a region, it's also important for you to win Indonesia in order to have some sort of foothold. So I think it applies as well, but obviously like this comes with its own set of challenges, right? Because Indonesia too as a country is really fragmented. I think if we're just talking about Jakarta, there's like 20 million people, which is, there's a lot of people, right? But then it's also like a very small market in the grand scheme of things. So you kind of have to go into some of the more remote areas, which is definitely much more challenging. I think people don't have the same level of technology compared to the bigger cities. They have different disposable incomes as well, much lower GDP per capita and things like that. So those are definitely some issues that, it's not really up to the startup to solve that too, right? Because like a lot of it has to do with like what the government is doing and how the economy is doing and things like that. So it's just kind of more macro issues. Yeah.
Right. Now, speaking of the economy and like world current state and all of that stuff, do you think that with the world starting to recover, starting to go back into normal-ish from the pandemic, that these health tech startups will thrive, or will they then see like a drop a little bit in their business because then not so many people are worried about health? Maybe hospitals are better able to manage their patients. What are you two's thoughts on that?
I think it's a really funny time, right? Because we are coming off the COVID-19 pandemic, which is where everybody just kind of became much more health conscious and where everyone's just kind of getting insurance, and things like that. So I guess it remains to be seen. I feel like maybe some health tech startups or models, like they might do better than others in a recession. Maybe things that deal with, like diagnosis and things like that. Like that might work better versus something that's like, maybe more oriented towards helping people improve their lifestyles and become healthier on a day-to-day basis, which, it's not an immediate need, right? So like people might consider just kind of like shelving that for a later time.
Right.
I completely second what Putra is saying. Health tech is going to grow, but the kind of health tech startups we're talking about, there's going to be a difference there. You may not want to call up your doctor for consultations as much. The last 2 years, every time you had a fever, you might want to get on a call with the doctor. That may not happen as much. But other things will grow in the terms of you want to start walking and you realize that you're not walking as well or as much. You're not going that distance that you would a few years ago. I think we've all become more conscious about that. So I think that focus has changed. Also, I think COVID-19 sort of told us that wherever your weakness lay, in your body, it sort of magnified it. It sort of attacked you in parts. And I think going forward, people don't want a repeat of that. So they're going to be looking at holistic solutions, but they're also going to be looking at sort of really building themselves up from the scratch, strengthening mind, body, and soul. For example, mental health startups. I mean, they've really grown in the last 1.5 years. And this kind of growth was not seen before. I mean, it was in both in Indonesia and in India, it was a very big deal to say that you were seeing a therapist. But all of these things are changing. So health tech is going to grow, but the kind of health tech that you're talking about that's going to change.
Right. And so just to switch gears for a little bit, I just got the poll results that we posed to our audience. So out of the 6 startups who participated today, they were asked which one is their favorite. And the one in the lead is ZiCare, which got 35% of the votes from our audience. So I want to put you guys in the judges' shoes for a second. If you were the judges who are currently debating right now who the winner should be, would you vote for ZiCare, or who would you vote for?
I want multiple votes.
How about you, Putra? What do you think?
I would probably agree with the audience. I think ZiCare seems like they may be somewhat ahead of the other startups. Like they've actually, onboarded quite a large number of customers and things like that, right? So I would definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also like to know who's voting. Like,
is it the ZiCare employees, you mean?
Yes, or maybe maybe today we have more of Indonesian audience, so that could also sort of sway things in ZiCare's factor. But yeah, I tried voting, but I wasn't allowed to. So.
Well, you might have a point there, because the second startup or the one with the second most votes currently at 18% is Periksain, which also comes from Indonesia. What did you guys think of Periksain's pitch, actually?
Do you want to?
Yeah, I think it's interesting for sure. I've seen a lot of people during COVID in Indonesia where they really did want to have home services, right? Where you kind of wanted to do like all of your tests at home. So I think, and I think that happens to offices as well, right? Because I think when we started reopening, offices were doing like mandated once a week tests or something like that for COVID. So there's definitely a market for it. I'm just not sure once COVID dies down, like whether people will still have like kind of the same appetite for these kind of tests.
Also, I think my concern would be that there are others in the space already doing it. For example, I think Halodoc in Indonesia does also provide home tests. So if you have to break into a competitor's territory, then you have to offer more to the people. So unless the process itself is different and you get maybe a lollipop or a chocolate after you've done with the test, I'm not sure how to sort of sway those people who are already with players like Halodoc, for example.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I think just to add to that too, right? Because it's not just health tech startups as well. We have like firmly established laboratories and clinics who, provide the same service, and they're much more well-known brands, I guess. So yeah, I think that would be a concern, I suppose.
Right. Now, the next most voted ones were tied between Cerebra and Haemtrics, which both got 16% of the votes. Do you guys have any opinions on Cerebra? Maybe let's start with Cerebra, because of our participants, it's the only one that comes from Kazakhstan. Any thoughts on Cerebra?
Oh, Putra has already made it clear he loves Cerebra, and I love it.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah,
I think it's also interesting too that I mean they are definitely targeting an international market, right? They're not just focused on Kazakhstan, and I think it would have like applications in a lot of developing markets, I feel. So
yeah, I keep going back to that 80 to 60% comparison of radiologists and Cerebra's tech. So yeah, I think it's going to be some time before I sort of get over that, and the 1 in 4 people will get a stroke. So
yeah, but I mean it's good. It's never too late to make lifestyle changes, I suppose, for all of us.
Of course, yeah. I think our judges are actually back. Let me just check real quick. I think they are back, and they do have. They finally come to a consensus, I think. I see them turning on their screen. So Nita and Putra, thank you so much for spending time with me talking about our participants for today. It's always nice to catch up with the two of you.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, I'll see you guys. Now, judges, welcome back to the stage. I hope you guys have managed to come to a consensus on who's going to walk away with our top prize this afternoon. So before we announce who our winner for today is, maybe could you guys tease us a little bit without spoiling the results? What can you tell me about the winning startup? Maybe David, could you shed some light on who might have won today's pitch battle?
Sure. Yeah, without giving away too much, Nathaniel.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a very, very difficult decision to make with 6 amazing stories from 6 amazing entrepreneurs, really solving such an array of challenges in the developing economies in which they work, and we were incredibly impressed with the sort of their stories, with the kind of quality of the pitches, and it made it, but it was really interesting, and I mean, an incredibly enjoyable experience. I think fundamentally for us, I mean, what it was not only a focus on a business model, because what we saw really were 6 really challenging and interesting and dynamic business models at play, but was the fundamental piece, I think, that really sort of helped us kind of make that kind of final decision, was really understanding the kind of true impact that the venture is likely to sort of serve. And I think really when we talk about impact, it's not really just about enabling you know, healthcare delivery. It's about enabling healthcare delivery to populations who otherwise wouldn't really be able to access that kind of healthcare. And I mean, that really kind of helped sort of frame how we kind of viewed our discussions and reach a final decision.
All right. Eunice, Jen, do you guys have thoughts on the winning startup for today?
No, David actually summarized it quite succinctly, so I don't have anything to add, but very excited to announce the winner. It's very meaningful what they're doing.
All right. Jen, do you have any thoughts?
No, likewise. I think David painted a really comprehensive picture, and I'll just end by saying, yeah, by being a health tech startup doesn't mean that you're impact from day one. There's still plenty more to do.
All right. Well, just to recap for everyone here, the winner of today's Tech in Asia and Johnson & Johnson Impact Ventures Pitch Battle 2022 will walk away with 2 11-inch 1 terabyte iPad Pros, while our runner-up will receive a year's premium subscription for 10 people on a mental well-being app with 24/7 access to coaches for on-demand support. So without further ado, let's announce the results. Let's start with the runner-up for our Tech in Asia and Johnson & Johnson Impact Ventures Pitch Battle 2022, who is ActivoLabs. Congratulations, ActivoLabs, for coming in runner-up. And now the moment that we've all been waiting for, the winner of today's pitch battle is Cerebra. Can we have Cerebra please come on stage along with ActivoLabs? Please turn on your cameras again. Congratulations to the both of you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
I don't believe it.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you so much for your pitches. I thank you as well for joining us today. Thank you to all our judges, and not forgetting all the rest of our participants for today. Thank you, of course, lastly, to our audience for joining us. Make sure to check out the Tech in Asia webpage for more events like today's pitch battle. On behalf of the Tech in Asia and the Johnson & Johnson Impact Ventures teams, our judges, and our startups, take care. We'll see you again soon.